Nothing signals about 1 year to go until the federal election, quite like a summertime cabinet shuffle. Justin Trudeau shook up his inner circle today in a bigger way than expected, bringing in some fresh faces and giving familiar ones new roles. Here's a look at the changes. These three ministers are trading job portfolios. François-Philippe Champagne is going from international trade to infrastructure. Amarjeet Sohi moves from infrastructure to natural resources. And Jim Carr steps away from natural resources to a job with a slightly tweaked title, Minister of International Trade Diversification, signaling the importance of finding new trading markets as Canada's relationship with the U.S. remains in flux. Minister of Public Services and Procurement Carla Qualtrough is keeping her job and adding accessibility. Mélanie Joly is going from Heritage to Minister of Tourism, Official Languages and La Francophonie. And Dominic LeBlanc is moving from Fisheries to Intergovernmental Affairs and Internal Trade, a portfolio that could see a fair bit of action given recent disputes between Ottawa and the provinces. New faces to the cabinet include former Chief Government Whip Pablo Rodriguez, who becomes Minister of Heritage, Mary Ng, Minister for Small Business, and Jonathan Wilkinson becomes Minister of Fisheries. Two fresh faces are taking on brand new titles, too. Philomena Tassi becomes the Minister for Seniors, and Bill Blair becomes the Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. He'll still have responsibility for legalizing pot, and he will be the point person for the irregular migration file. So how will Bill Blair juggle that wide-ranging portfolio? Joining me now is the new Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction, Bill Blair. Hi, Minister Blair. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Vashi.
Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I know that you're new to the portfolio, but I wanted to get your personal perspective. Do you feel that the flow of asylum seekers crossing into Canada in between points of entry, official points of entry, is a problem?
Well, I will tell you it challenges communities. Certainly, I've spoken to the Mayor of Toronto. We've also heard from Montreal and other impacted communities, and even the people that live immediately adjacent to where these people are crossing. There are issues that need to be addressed, and we have a responsibility to do that in the most appropriate way. And so we're engaging with like all of the ministries of our government and with the provinces and municipalities to ensure that we fulfill our international obligations and, frankly, our moral obligations to those seeking asylum and refugee, but do it in a way which I think is properly managed for all Canadians.
What does that mean, properly managed?
Well, it means, I think, that we have to ensure that our processes are efficient and that we deal with this, that we uphold the rule of law, and where there are impacts on communities, that we work with those communities to minimize any negative impact that might have.
Does that mean more money for those communities,
well,
like Lacole, like Toronto?
And it can, and I think it by necessity. I know in the City of Toronto, for example, we've been working very closely with the Mayor there and with municipal officials. They're feeling an impact, and it's affecting, their existing capacity in their shelter system. And so we've come in with resources, and we know that there's other things that we will be doing with them in order to address the concerns that they raise. I think we've got a responsibility to work together. Canadians expect that of us, and that's our intent.
You're giving that money directly to the city because the province has said that they don't want, they essentially say this is a problem of the federal government's making, and we're not going to pay. The new Doug Ford government says that. Is that just accepted as okay, and you'll just be dealing with the cities individually?
Well, I will tell you that we have an important work to do now, and we're finding ways to get that done as expeditiously as possible. But I have every confidence in working with our provincial and territorial counterparts in every province and territory, including Ontario. I've already had a conversation just even a few days ago with the minister responsible in Ontario, and I heard from him this morning with a note of congratulations. And so I'm confident that we'll find ways to work together. We all have a common interest in acting on behalf of the people of Canada, certainly the people of Ontario, and in order to do that, we'll work together.
Are you confident you can work with Doug Ford?
Yeah, of course.
Why? You have and I should say for viewers who aren't as familiar with what happened in Toronto, you have an acrimonious past with him. I mean, he's had to apologize for you. You threatened libel.
That's very much the past. But I've also had the opportunity to work with the Premier in his previous capacity as a city councillor. We've worked well together. I think we both recognize we have a responsibility to the people of Ontario and to the people of Canada to do what is right. And I see every opportunity for us to work collaboratively together to get the job done.
Doug Ford, Lisa MacLeod, his government, you highlighted she's the minister in charge of immigration. A number of federal conservatives have basically pointed to the Prime Minister's tweet a number of months ago and said, this is the culprit. This is what started this wave of asylum seekers coming here. Do you think it was wrong of the Prime Minister to tweet?
Not at all. I think that the Prime Minister's communications, all of his communications, have been entirely consistent with the value of Canadians and our commitment to our international responsibilities and the rule of law. And anyone who might suggest that the challenges of international migration are based on a single tweet, I think that's a little bit of an overstep.
Do you think it was misinterpreted, though, by people? Do you think that it perhaps, whether intentionally or not,
honestly,
sent the wrong message?
I think the message that Canada is a welcoming country that values diversity, that values the contribution that immigrants have made to this country, that's been built on the hard work of immigrants. I think those are Canadian values, and the Prime Minister quite appropriately expresses that. I also think that there are a number of very complicated factors that have given rise to the increase of irregular migration into this country, and we're addressing those factors.
When you talk about addressing them, does that include rehauling or renegotiating the Safe Third Country Agreement?
Well,
will you be in charge of that? Well,
I don't want to get, first of all, I think that there are, one of the things that my new job entails is working collaboratively with other ministries. And they already have their responsibilities, and that's not significantly changing. I intend to work closely with the Minister of Immigration, with the Minister of Public Safety, the Minister of Justice, and others within the government. We've got a job to do, and maintaining public safety and dealing with these issues that arise in an appropriate way is our collective responsibility, and I intend to work collectively to find solutions that work for Canadians.
I'm kind of confused, though. Does that mean that you will be leading or part of the negotiations in the Safe Third Country?
And frankly, I don't have my mandate letter from the Prime Minister, but I think I have a responsibility there, but it's a shared responsibility.
Do you think it's a good agreement?
I think there's merit in the agreement, and there may be some additional things that we need to discuss with the United States and others, but I think it's something that we can build upon.
I want to move on because you're still in charge of the cannabis file. What is the reasoning behind linking legalization of marijuana and the marijuana file with border security?
Well, it's a complex file. It has an international component with international conventions. We also have heard concerns being expressed by a number of Canadians about what impact that this can have on a border, so it's related. But the complex file, as you know, Vashi, is a complicated one. And we've been working through all aspects of this, and including the implications it may have for people who go to the border. I'm more than familiar with that legislation, and we've been working very diligently to make sure that there's an orderly implementation of these new regulations, that Canadians have a good understanding of what their rights and their responsibilities are under this legislation, and so that in order to effect that orderly implementation, we're working very carefully on all aspects of it, including the border.
How worried are you about the challenges Canadians will face at the border when marijuana is legalized?
I'm aware that some people are concerned, and we'll address those concerns.
Are you concerned?
Actually, quite frankly, no.
Why not?
I think there's an enormous amount of economic activity and the movement of people and goods across that border every single day. I've had to deal with these issues in my previous capacity as a law enforcement official, and my experience is that people work it out. There's some uncertainty. There's some uncertainty because we're entering into a new area of strict regulation as opposed to prohibition of cannabis in this country, and it can have an impact on the border. But I have a great deal of confidence as well.
What assurances do you have, though? Because if there's one thing, not to interrupt, but if there's one thing we do know about this government in the United States, they're very unpredictable. And we do know that Jeff Sessions, for example, is not in favor of legalizing marijuana. Do you have any assurances that people shouldn't be worried?
I can tell you that there have been discussions, both at the political level and at the operations level. My experience primarily is dealing with those responsible for border integrity, border security, and operations, and I have a great deal of confidence based on that experience that they'll make it work. And I understand that there's also a political element to this, and that those discussions are ongoing.
Will you be part of those discussions with your American counterparts?
I anticipate that I'll be involved.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks a lot, Minister Blair.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations again.
Thanks so much.